The call came just past midnight, when the wind outside was howling so loud it rattled the panes of my apartment. I was grading final essays for my criminology students when the screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in years. Claire Forrester. I stared at the name for a second, thinking it was a mistake. My cousin and I hadn't spoken in nearly 8 years, not since the funeral, not since the event we silently agreed to do. I answered, "Hello?" There was a long silence, then still. Then a voice so cracked it was barely recognizable. "Daniel, it's back. It's..." The line cut out. I tried calling back. Voicemail. I called again and again. Nothing. That was the night I decided to go back to Rovell, Minnesota, the forgotten northern town where Claire and I had grown up, raised by our eccentric grandfather after both our parents died in a suspicious household. Rovell was the kind of place that didn't exist on GPS until 2014. Logging roads, endless farms, houses too far apart to be neighborhoods. The town had maybe 300 residents, one garden, and a rusted church that leaned slightly. And I knew, deep down, that Claire's call meant that the past had come to my soul. I arrived in Rovell 3 days later. Snow hit hard this far north, even in late fall. The temperature had dropped below freezing by dusk, and the forest had taken on that dead silent tone I remembered from childhood, like the world had moved between the days. Claire's house sat at the end of a winding trail past the cemetery. A sagging, 2-story Victorian-style home we inherited from grandfather John. I hadn't set foot in it since I was 17. The porch light was on, swinging slightly. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the house looked abandoned and cold. Blankets on the floor, drawers pulled out, a coffee mug shattered by the couch. The TV was on, static hissing like insects. But no Claire. Instead, I found a journal. It lay open on the dining table, under a stack of Polaroids and a partially melted candle. Its cover was the kind Claire always used. Black leather, stitched edges, slightly warped and narrow. Inside, her handwriting scrawled across every page. The first line I read chilled me. I went back to the morning. I know what I saw when we were kids wasn't just a dream. The whispers are louder now, and I think they're coming tonight. My throat tightened. I flipped through more entries. They grew more frantic, more powerful. Mentions of the thing on the floor, references to the stone, long sealed up in the famous cemetery. Our grandfather had worked there before he retired, but he never talked about it. Then came the door. It wasn't a professional sketch, but it was detailed. A tall, emaciated figure with eyes like gold coins and a slit of a mouth that ran up its cheeks. It stood in the mouth of a tunnel, arms outstretched, as if offering something. Below the image, Claire had scrawled, "He never left the moon. He still feeding." I stepped away from the journal and turned slowly in the room. The air had grown still. Somewhere upstairs, I thought I heard a gunshot. "Claire?" No answer. I took the stairs 2 at a time. Her bedroom looked recently used. There was still warmth in the sheets. A glass of water sat on the nightstand, half full. The window was open a crack, letting in a sharp breeze that made the curtain flutter like a whispering hand. But no Claire. On her desk, a photo of us as kids. Me with a scraped knee, Claire holding a flashlight too big for her. Both of us standing in front of a stone shark, half buried by a dive. Behind us, barely visible in the photo's frame, was a shadow. Long, curved, reaching toward us. I turned the photo over. On the back she'd written in pencil, "Come back before it's time." That night, I tried to sleep in the house, but something kept tapping at the windows. Not branches, not animals, just soft. One at a time. At 3:11 a.m. exactly, the kitchen radio turned on by itself. A low hum, then static, then what sounded like a voice whispering in my ear. I left. I spent the rest of the night in my rental car, engine up, parked by the town's only gas station. The next day I went to the Rovell Historical Society. The old librarian, Mrs. Talbot, was still alive and still suspicious of strangers. She didn't recognize me until I told her who I was. "Ah, the Jonathan. You've got his eyes." She lit a cigarette and looked me over. "You hear about Claire?" "She's missing." Her expression didn't change. She inhaled slowly. She's not the truth. "You know that, right?" She led me to a dusty cabinet in the back. Inside were files from the 60s to early 2000s. Missing persons, mine reports, weather logs. She pulled out a thick folder labeled stroller for windows. Inside were newspaper clippings, maps of the mine tunnels, and notes scrawled in the margins by someone named A.D. Wick, the old mine king. Dozens of men had vanished in the deeper levels of the mine before it closed, but their disappearances had never made a headline. Your grandfather, she said, was part of the last crew. She handed me a black and white photo. 6 miners in dusty uniforms, posing in front of the gaping mine shaft. Jonah stood second from the left, but it was the man on the far right that drew my eye. He wasn't facing the camera, just slightly turned, as if listening for something behind him. Below the photo was a caption. Final team, stole at Deep Shaft, 1973. Only 3 came back. Claire's journal mentioned the mine several times. She'd gone back there recently, despite the entrance being boarded up. She claimed she'd found a side tunnel, an old ventilation shaft that still led into the deep levels. I knew what I had to do. I packed a flashlight At dusk, I made my way to the edge of the forest, where the overgrown path to the mine still lay buried beneath years of leaves and grass. The forest was too quiet. No birds, no wind, just the sound of my boots scratching frost-bitten grass. I reached the mine entrance by night. The boards had indeed been pried loose. The air that leaked out was damp and cold. Inside, the darkness felt alive. I clicked on the flashlight and stepped into the tunnel. The deeper I went, the more I realized that Claire had been right. This was no sealed tomb. The mine still breathed. It exhaled stale, wet air that clung to my skin like invisible nail. The passage was narrow, wood supports rotted through in places, and everything was about 50 feet in, the light from the entrance disappeared behind me. I was now in complete darkness, except for the narrow beam of my flashlight. Claire had marked paths in her journal. 3 main tunnels, she wrote. Go left at the fork. Listen for the hum. I reached the fork within minutes. The right tunnel was partially collapsed. The left was open but slanted downward. The air there smelled stronger, like rusted wood. I stepped left. The walls began to move. Strange markings appeared, etched into the rock, not by tools, but by something else. They weren't simple. Jagged lines, circular grooves, indentations like fingers pressing through stone. I recorded them with the voice recorder I bought from Claire's room. November 4th, 9:23 p.m. Descending deeper into the old Stolet shaft. Walls show non-mechanical erosion, possibly organic pattern. Then I heard a sound, soft, subtle, almost like humming, but not a human hum. More like wind being forced through a throat. I turned off my flashlight and stood in the dark. It was definitely coming from ahead. I pressed forward. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber. I stepped carefully across the wet floor, my flashlight skimming over collapsed rails and rusted. Something hit me. A shoe, torn at the side. Next to it, a thermos of the initial JH. I picked it up. It still free. A breath escaped from the hole in the mine's wall, cold and slow, like the mountain was alive and deeply asleep. I sat and opened Claire's journal again. One entry read, "The singing comes from below. If you answer, it stops. If you don't, it gets closer." I looked up. The sound had stopped. Then I heard a scrape not far behind me. Metal on stone. I turned sharply, light scanning the tunnel. Nothing. Another scrape, this time from the side. I backed toward the chamber's centre and turned in a slow circle, flashlight flamed. Shadows bent where they shouldn't. Some looked like arms reaching. One held its shape longer than it should have. That's when I heard it. A voice, distant, low, but perfectly clear. It said, "Jonah?" My blood went cold. That was my grandfather's name. I called back. "Who's there?" Silence. Then the voice again, closer. "Danny." "That's my name." I dropped the journal. My hands were shaking. I turned to leave, but the tunnel had changed. It had shifted. The path I'd taken was no longer a straight exit. The rails twisted unnaturally, snaking into the dark. My flashlight flickered. That's when I saw the first face. It appeared in the tunnel wall, not behind me, like the rock had softened just enough to absorb and hold it. The face was stretched, eyes wide inside the skin, mouth pulled into a grin. Another face, then another. They lined the wall like fossils trapped mid-hand, and all of them looked like the men from that place. I stumbled backward and tripped over something, a bundle of fabric. It was Claire's jacket. Stuffed in the pocket was a folding hat. It showed a section of the mine, not on any official blueprint. A deep shaft, circled in red, marked with one word, Fever. Underneath the note in Claire's handbag, it doesn't take teeth, it takes their essence. I didn't understand it first. Then I played back to the tape. My voice had changed. It echoed strange, weird, dragged out. Then it replayed the word Jonah, not in my voice but Claire's. Then it said my name, in my grandfather's voice. The mine was using voices it had auxiliary, and now it had clothes. I ran. I didn't care if the tunnel shifted. I didn't care about directions. I ran until my lungs burned and my flashlight died completely. Darkness swallowed me. I screamed for Claire. Something answered, but it wasn't her. It said, "You were always meant to come back." The mine had gone silent again, but not this time. It was the silence of something waiting. I stood frozen in the dark, pulse roaring in my ears. The flashlight was gone, the recorder still played softly in my hand, catching every quick, terrifying breath. "You were always meant to come back," the voice had said. It was my grandfather's voice. But my grandfather had died in 1974. I moved forward by memory, following the faintest hint of air. My boots slid in the soft earth. Walls pressed tighter around me, and I scraped my shoulder against something, soft and yielding. I reached out, not stone, found the ceiling. I pulled back and tried not to scream. There was a body slumped against the wall. No, more than one. Collapsed miners sunken into the rock. Their skin was grey and mottled, faces twisted in expressions of deep, unbearable listening. Not one, surrender. The passage widened, and I entered a circular shaft lined with bones, human bones, arranged in a spiral, as if something or someone had taken the time to decorate. In the centre was a hole in the image, a perfect black void. Claire had written about it in her final journal entry. It doesn't feed on people, it feeds on memories, voices. Your pain is an opera, and the deeper you go, the more of yourself it speaks. I stood at the edge and peered down. A cold, low howl rose from beneath. Not wind, not breath, a presence. I took a step back. Then I heard it. Down. There it was. And down here. My mind screamed, "Don't move." My legs disappeared. I breathed fast. I lowered myself into the pit. The dirt was damp and soft. I climbed using the old rail anchors and then descending foot by foot into an abyss. The shaft narrowed, then widened again into a cavern, massive and pitch black. A rusted mining elevator stood near the far side, its cage half submerged in stagnant water, and in the centre of the room was a ship. It rose slowly from the pool, a tall, faceless figure that shimmered faintly, like heat over paper. Its outline was human, but wrong. Limbs too long, neck too curved, body wrapped in strands of blackened clothing that pulsed and rose like veins. It moved without sound. It stopped 10 feet from me, then it spoke. "Daniel, I'm so sorry." I fell to my knees. "Claire?" I tried to resist it, the voice said, but I couldn't stop it from reaching, from eating it. The shape took another step, its face forward, my grandfather's face, then shifted, my mother, my father. Claire, my own face. It takes voices. It limits what it steals. I raised the recorder and hit play. My voice echoed from the speaker, uncertain of how. The entity stopped, twitched. Then I played Claire's recording, her words, her voice, her breath. The figure howled, a sound not of pain but rage. I understood, it hated being known, documented, described, like a creature born in silence. The journal, the recording, her notes. That was why she kept writing, to track it. I pressed the recorder against the rock wall around. The howl followed. I reached the vertical shaft and scrambled upwards, slipping on wet stone and rusted rails. The cave shook behind me. Loose earth rained down. A section collapsed, sealing the tunnel. The tunnel I'd come through had shifted again, now a spiral. The mine was moving, but I could hear wind above. I followed it, crawling upward through dust and down, until finally, after what felt like hours, I emerged into the open air. Outside, I collapsed. Claire's journal was still in her pocket, pages torn and bloody. I looked back. The mine's entrance was gone, just smooth hillside, but I knew it was still there. It's always still there. The mine is sealed, for me. I don't know what I brought out with me. I keep hearing my own voice in recordings I heard on air. Sometimes I hear Claire call to me from the bathroom sink, or through the static on the car radio. Sometimes I hear myself, but I don't. I don't know where to begin. I don't even know how much of this I can explain without sounding like I've lost my mind. All I can say for sure is that something was in that house with me. Something real. And I let it in. When my Aunt Lillian passed away in 2019, she left behind her house in Plainfield, Massachusetts. A crooked old Victorian at the edge of town. 3 stories tall with a collapsed greenhouse out back and an attic window that never quite closed. She had lived there alone since 1987, ever since her divorce from my uncle, and locals rarely saw her except for the post office and grocery store. I hadn't visited her since I was 13. So, when I inherited the place, I expected dust, creaking floorboards, and maybe a few old photos. I didn't expect what I found upstairs. The house was worse than expected. The roof sagged in places, mold had spread along the wallpaper, and the wooden stairs bent alarmingly under my weight. The electricity was spotty. The water ran brown for the first few minutes. I set up camp on the 2nd floor, planning to stay a week to sort through her things. By day 3, I'd started hearing the footsteps. They weren't loud, just soft, deliberate pacing overhead. The attic, back and forth, measured and slow. Always after midnight. I told myself it was raccoons, or a loose shutter. I even climbed up the pull-down stairs with a flashlight once, nothing but dusty boxes, insulation, and the smell of cedar. But the air felt strange, thick, like it had weight, and there were the impressions in the dust. Not paw prints, not random drag marks, footprints, human-sized, bare. On the 5th night, I woke up at 3:41 a.m., the exact same time I'd woken the 2 nights prior. The air was colder than usual, and I could hear it again. The steps, just above me. This time they stopped directly overhead. No more pacing, just stillness. And a faint creak, as if someone was gently rocking back on their heels. I whispered, "Hello?" The sound stopped. I waited 5 minutes before getting up. I told myself I was being ridiculous, but I was already holding the flashlight. I climbed the stairs slowly, each rung groaning under my weight. I reached the attic door and hesitated. Something moved. Not in the attic, but in the wall beside me. A soft thud, then a dragging sound, and a whisper. I couldn't make out the words, just the tone, urgent, soft, like breath through a crack. I backed down the stairs and shut the attic hatch behind me. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I checked the walls of the upstairs hallway. There were hairline cracks in the plaster, water damage, some black mold. But then I found something strange behind an old armoire, a wooden panel, newer than the rest of the wall, unscrewed, just tacked in place. I pried it loose with a screwdriver. Behind it, a narrow vertical crawl space, no more than 2 feet wide, running alongside the wall and up toward the attic rafters. It smelled like old paint and something sour. There were scratch marks on the inside panel, long ones, and a piece of cloth. I pulled it out. It was a strip of faded blue fabric, stained with something brown. Looked like old blood. I called my friend Erica that afternoon. She was a documentarian, and she'd done a short film about missing persons cases in New England. She was the only person I knew who might believe what I was starting to suspect. She showed up the next day with her audio gear, her Panasonic GH5 and a crowbar. We spent the next 2 days cataloguing everything strange we found. The attic footprints, the crawl space, the strange noises on the audio recorder, what sounded like someone humming behind a wall, and the broken mirror in the guest bedroom that had writing on the back of it. Don't follow the footsteps. Erica laughed nervously. You ever know your aunt-to-be paranoid? I shrugged. Not that I remember, but she was a shut-in for years. That night we set up motion detectors on the attic stairs and fell asleep with the recorders running. At 3:39 a.m. something triggered the sensor, and the attic hatch opened, by itself. The recording caught it all, the sound of the wooden hatch creaking open, the flutter of dust, and then something stepping down the stairs. You can hear Erica bolt upright. Then we heard the whisper again, much closer this time. He left the door open. Erica and I didn't sleep the rest of the night. We just sat there, lights on, listening. The next day we went into town. I wanted to know if anyone remembered Aunt Lillian acting strangely, or if anything unusual had happened in that house before. We stopped by the library and asked the clerk if they had any old town records. That's when things got darker. According to a newspaper article from 1988, just a year after my aunt moved in, A teenage girl had gone missing in that neighborhood. Her name was Caitlin Rowe. Last seen walking home from school. Her route took her past 12 Greybriar Lane. That was my aunt's street. The article mentioned unconfirmed sightings of Caitlin in the months that followed. One neighbour claimed to hear knocking from inside Lillian's walls, but police found nothing. No one was ever charged. That night, Erica reviewed the attic camera footage again. She slowed it down to quarter speed and brightened the shadows. Frame by frame, we watched the attic door open, the dust fall, and then, right at the threshold, a figure, thin, pale, wearing what looked like a faded blue blouse and no face, just empty, smooth skin. It stood there for 3 full minutes, then turned and went back up. I haven't left the house in 2 days, not because I'm afraid of what's outside. I'm afraid if I leave, it'll lock the door behind me, and I won't be able to get back in, because whatever's in this house isn't just Clinton, it's guarding. After watching the attic footage over and over, the figure at the door, the blue blouse, the faceless shape, Erica and I sat in silence. She played the clip frame by frame, trying to convince herself it was just a trick of the dust, a shadow, but her hands trembled. "I've worked with ghost hunters," she said finally. "Cranks, mostly. But this is different. This is more like a warning." We went back to the attic that afternoon, and Erica brought her infrared thermometer. As she swept the space, I noticed the temperature plummet near the far corner, where the insulation sagged and the boards looked newer. That's when Erica saw the gap in the wall, just a few inches wide, but deep. She shone her light into the darkness and found a narrow crawl space, invisible unless you were standing directly over it. Inside, a blanket, a cracked ceramic doll, and a broken Walkman with a cassette still on. We played the tape downstairs. The voice that emerged was young, hoarse, and shaking. Day 9, I think. It's hard to tell. I tried the walls again last night, screamed until I tasted blood. I don't know if she hears me or if she's pretending not to. Sometimes I hear her pacing. She talks to someone, but there's no one there. I think she's feeding it. I think she's feeding it me. We stopped the tape. Erica whispered, "Jesus, Matt, what was your aunt into?" I couldn't answer. My hands were cold. I kept remembering my childhood visit, age 13, how I was never allowed near the attic, how Aunt Lillian insisted I sleep in the living room, how I'd wake up to floor creaks above me. Had I heard something then? Had I just forgotten? That night, I awoke to Erica standing at the window. "Do you hear it?" she said. I listened. From somewhere deep inside the house, not the attic this time, came a rhythmic thump. Not footsteps, knocking, from inside the walls. Erica turned slowly. Her eyes looked distant, unfocused. "Matt," she said quietly, "there's someone under the floor." We tore up the living room planks the next day. The boards came up easily, too easily, as if they'd been removed before. Underneath was dirt, dry and undisturbed, except for one patch that looked newer, looser. We dug with our hands. 6 inches down, Erica's fingers scraped something hard. She pulled it out slowly, a jawbone, human. Another few minutes of digging revealed more. Ribs, vertebrae, a broken wristwatch still wrapped around a wrist bone. Inside the wristband, a name carved with a penknife. Rowe, the rest was scratched off. We called the sheriff that afternoon. They sealed off the house and ordered an excavation team. Erica gave her footage to a contact in Boston. I was told to find a hotel, but I didn't go. That night, I returned to the house alone because something had occurred to me. In all the chaos, all the footage, all the whispers, we never asked who the whispering voice was talking about. It hadn't said she. It hadn't said they. The recording from the Walkman, I think she's feeding it. I think she's feeding it me. I stepped into the house just past midnight. No police tape, no lock. The air inside felt wet, like the fog outside had seeped through the bricks. I climbed the stairs to the attic one final time. The air grew colder with each step. The hairs on my neck rose. The whole house felt like it was holding its breath. I stepped into the attic and looked toward the crawl space. It was open, wider now, as if something bigger had passed through it. I heard a sound behind me, a creak. I turned and froze. At the top of the stairs stood Erica, but something was wrong. Her eyes were too wide. Her neck twitched in tiny, unnatural spasms. She smiled at me with her lips pressed tight, like someone trying to remember how. "Erica?" I whispered. She didn't answer. Then slowly, too slowly, she raised her hand and pointed at the crawl space. "It's hungry," she said in a voice that was not hers. I didn't move. Erica's hand remained extended, pointing into the crawl space. Her fingers trembled, but the rest of her stood too still, like she wasn't even breathing. The attic lights flickered. Then, for one terrifying second, I saw another shadow move inside the crawl space. Something shifted, just past the edge of the beam from my flashlight, too quick to define. "Erica!" I stepped toward her. "Say something, anything." She lowered her hand, blinked and screamed. She collapsed to the floor, clutching her head. "Something touched me inside," she sobbed. Not my body, my mind. It moved through me like smoke. I rushed to her, pulled her away from the crawl space, and we fled down the stairs. Behind us, the attic door slammed shut. No wind, no draft, just slammed. Back in the living room, Erica rocked herself on the couch while I made calls. Police, her brother, anyone who might believe us. But my phone had no signal. Hers too. We tried the landline. Dead. The silence in the house grew thicker. It felt like the air had weight. Like the house had inhaled and was waiting to exhale. Then Erica stood suddenly. I remember something. She walked to the kitchen. "In the basement," she said. "There was a room. Your aunt told me never to go in it. Said it was unfinished. But I heard something from there the day we moved the furniture." I followed her downstairs. The basement had always felt wrong. Not scary, just off. The temperature was always a few degrees cooler. The smell of old earth never faded. Erica led me to a plywood wall on the far end. It looked hastily constructed, with uneven panels and long rusted nails. The wall didn't match the rest of the foundation. She knocked, hollow. We pried the plywood loose. Beneath it was a narrow, arched brick tunnel leading maybe 20 feet to a heavy wooden door. Carved into the door were words in an old, almost Gothic hand. "Don't feed the room." We looked at each other. Neither of us wanted to be the one to touch the doorknob. Eventually I reached forward, hands shaking, and turned it. The door swung inward with a long creak, revealing a small chamber lined with mirrors. Dozens of them, big cracked antique mirrors on every wall and even the ceiling. At the center of the room was a chair, and on it a pair of manacles. Erica whispered, "This is a ritual room," but it didn't feel occult, it felt clinical. Cold, as if someone had been studied here, observed from every angle. One mirror was unbroken, and in it I saw something I couldn't understand. My reflection stood behind me, but smiled when I wasn't. We backed out, fast. The moment the door shut, I felt a vibration through the floor, like something deep below us had stirred. "It's waking up," Erica said. "It's been asleep." We ran upstairs, but the hallway was different. The wallpaper was older, yellow, peeling. A cracked picture frame now hung where a window used to be. The hallway was shorter. "It's changing the house," I muttered. "No," Erica corrected. "It's showing you how it really looks." I opened the nearest door, the guest bedroom, and stepped back in horror. The walls were lined with dozens of stacked journals, all identical. Red leather, no dust, and all of them had my name on the spine. M. Rowley, 1992, M. Rowley 2001, M. Rowley 2023. I grabbed one at random and flipped through the pages. They were filled with entries I'd never written, descriptions of dreams I hadn't had, arguments with people I hadn't met, meals I hadn't eaten, yet every detail was true. It was like the house had recorded me, or worse, had written me. Erica tugged me from the room. "We have to get out of here, now." We rushed for the front door, only to find the entire wall was gone, not destroyed, just gone. In its place was an endless hallway stretching into the dark. Lamps buzzed overhead, flickering, and from far down the hall a shape began to walk toward us. A tall figure, limbs too long, something swinging in its hand. We turned. The stairwell was now a spiral, carpeted in red. At the top, the attic door pulsed like a wound. "Where do we go?" I asked, out of breath. Erica turned to me. Her voice was brittle, quiet. "We don't go, we remember." She led me back to the living room, or what was left of it. A fireplace now stood there, one that hadn't existed before. Inside, old photographs burned slowly, black and white. People in 1940s clothing, always standing in front of this house. In every photo, one figure was repeated. The same tall man, the hollow guest, never facing the camera, always turned just slightly away, always watching. Then we heard the whisper. It didn't come from the walls this time. It came from inside our heads. You found the door, you heard the name, you saw the room, now you belonged. The windows vanished, the lights failed, and the final thing we saw was a face emerging from the hallway mirror. Our own faces, distorted, weeping, mouth open far too wide. Then everything went black.